Hello there! This video is going to help you complete your Chapter 8 and 9 Applied Activity, focusing on applying the employee motivation theories around job design. Before we get into those theories, though, I'm going to just quickly cover the need-based, behavior-based, and cognitive-based theories. Some of them are covered, some of what I'm going to talk about is covered in your book, but some of it is not. And then we're really going to spend most of the time in this lecture looking at the job characteristics model and the job demands resources model, because that's really the focus of your applied activity. But I just wanted to kind of cover the other theories just really quickly before we jump into those. So let's first look at need-based theories. So the need-based theories of motivation really emphasize the role that individual differences in certain types of needs play in determining work motivation. So it's really the needs that satisfy or that are satisfied by work. The needs that are satisfied by work leads to motivation. And really the heart of the need-based theories is that everybody has different needs. And so work is going to be differently motivating for different people based on the needs that they're trying to meet. And the needs that they're trying to meet are going to really determine what types of work they seek and what they want in terms of rewards and recognition. So one of the need-based theories that most of you have heard of is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So that's the one where you have the pyramid going all the way from survival to self-actualization at the top. So really what this theory suggests is that once your work allows you to survive and be safe, right, the lower level needs, then you're more motivated by like higher level needs, like the need to belong and feel important. Then another need-based theory is achievement motivation theory. And again, I'm just going to cover these really quickly because they're not really the focus of your assignment, but just to give you some background before we jump into the more recent theories. So achievement motivation theory is really, again, that different employees are motivated by different things. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs really suggests that everybody has these needs, and then the needs that they're trying to satisfy depends on the needs that they've already satisfied. But achievement motivation theory really looks at how different people have unique and different needs. So for instance, employees with the need for achievement are motivated by praise. So maybe they're motivated by achievement. So praise motivates them. Or employees that are motivated by a need for power are motivated by promotion opportunities. So again, different people motivated by different things. Another tenet of achievement motivation theory is that employees with a desire for affiliation or for like social connections are motivated by the desire to be liked. So if you're looking for affiliation or social connections, then you're going to do things because you want to be liked. So for instance, if somebody really had a high need for achievement, then praising them for their work would be very rewarding. But if somebody had a really high need for power, praise really isn't going to matter. They can be like, well, give me a promotion. I don't care about the praise. I want more power. Then real quick, the behavior-based theories really focus on the external control of behaviors. So it's really trying to have an external control of those behavioral outcomes. So like some instance would be like classical and operant conditioning, if you remember from Psych 101. So inflicting punishment or rewards to try to change bad behaviors and maintain good behaviors. Okay. Then there's a whole set of cognitive-based theories of motivation, and those are really theories that see employees as rational human beings who cognitively or psychologically assess personal costs and benefits before taking action. So it's all about a cost-benefit analysis. So example of cognitive-based theory would be like Vroom's expectancy theory. So Vroom's expectancy theory of motivation really suggests that employees are only motivated by incentives or rewards if they are confident that they can perform well, so that they have, adequate training and sufficient instructions for how to do their job, that they also believe that performance will be rewarded, so that they're confident that if they do well, they will actually get the reward, and that rewards aren't based on some arbitrary thing or based on like who is the favorite of the boss or whatever. So they're only motivated if they care about, or if the incentives or rewards, if they're confident that they can perform well, that they know that their performance will be rewarded, and then finally, if they actually care about the reward, right? Because based on achievement motivation, different rewards matter to different people. So that's kind of the basis of expectancy theory, right? Can I perform well? Will performance be rewarded? And do I like the reward? So those are really the more early types of research on employee motivation, kind of in the 60s and 70s. And that research really focused on internal processes of the employee more than work design itself, which is kind of unfortunate because some of these things we can't, as an employer or as a supervisor or even as an IO psychologist that's trying to help motivate employees, a lot of these things are out of our control. So work design theories provide more applied types of things because you can change the characteristics of the work environment easier than you can change people's motivations or desires. So the first really strong job design or work design theory is called the job characteristics model. And you can see here that it's from the 70s. The next model that I'm going to talk about, the job resources demands model, that's a more contemporary, more modern model. But the job characteristics model it was revolutionary in its time because it really started to think about the different things about the job itself that should be universally motivating. So this really focuses on how characteristics of the job have an effect on how employees think and feel on the job, regardless of their individual differences. And then that's what results in motivation and performance. So I'm going to draw you a pretty picture right now, a little flow chart. I love flow charts. So we're going to first start off with the fact that in the job characteristics model, it's kind of a three-tiered situation. So we have core dimensions, which are really the work or the job characteristics. Okay. And then those core dimensions lead to psychological states. So this model still is concerning, individual or internal processes, but this model really states that these dimensions kind of universally lead to these psychological states. It's not focused on individual differences as much. And then the outcomes. So in the job characteristics model, we start off with a cluster of similar dimensions. So we have skill variety. Now you're going to be coming up with, you're going to be identifying if these core dimensions are present in a specific job in your assignment. So make sure that you feel comfortable about what these different core dimensions are. So skill variety is basically being given the opportunity to use a bunch of different skills, where you're not just doing a repetitive task that only requires one specific skill, but you're given the opportunity to kind of demonstrate all the different things that you know, and that your job, it just has some variety to it. You're not just doing the same thing over and over again. Another one is task identity. So task identity is really being able to see a project from the beginning to the end, all the way through completion. If you're working on an assembly line and you're just doing one little bolt, right, over and over and over, you have a very low level of task identity because you don't see the big picture, right? You're just doing one teeny little piece of that project. But for me, for instance, I just did the organizational climate survey for Nevada State College. So I worked with a team to develop the survey items. I worked with the team to recruit participants to take the survey. Then I analyzed all the data from the survey myself. I put together the feedback report myself. And then I'm working now to have meetings and focus groups with different groups on campus to talk about the results and what to do about them. So I have a very high level of task identity because I saw the project through the whole process. I also have a lot of skill variety, right? So I'm getting to talk to people. I'm doing statistical analyses. I'm doing literature searches, lots of different skills involved in that task. Also, task significance. So how important is the job that I'm doing for the overall productivity and functioning of the company? So for my climate survey example, I felt a high level of task significance as well because I was feeling like my service work was making a difference in the college. We're trying to see what it's like to work at Nevada State College so that we can work towards making it an even more awesome place to work. And because I'm doing the consulting for a place I actually work for, it feels very significant to me. So now those are all kind of clustered together, and the theory suggests that skill variety, task identity, and task significance are going to lead to meaningfulness. So how meaningful do you feel like your work is? And there's a lot of research on the very, very powerful impact of meaningfulness on all these outcomes. So the outcomes of interest in the job characteristics model are, of course, motivation. And not just motivation, but intrinsic or internal motivation. Extrinsic motivation is like, here's some money, do a job for me, right? Extrinsic motivation is like you're rewarded by external reward, or you're motivated by external rewards, whereas intrinsic motivation is more coming from inside. Also, job performance, job satisfaction, also it's a predictor of absenteeism, or like being late, or not present. So missing work or showing up late. And then also turnover, which is just a fancy word for quitting. So all these things lead to meaningfulness, which should result in high intrinsic motivation, high performance, high job satisfaction, low absenteeism, and low turnover. All right. Now there's some other job characteristics that are in this model as well. One of them is autonomy. So autonomy is really all about being trusted to do the work the way that you see fit, not being micromanaged, being left alone, being trusted to do your job well. It's kind of one of those things where instead of saying, okay, here's every single teeny thing I need you to do for this project, instead be like, okay, here's the finished product I need for this project. You decide the best way to go about doing it. So my job as professor, I get a ton of autonomy. I get a course description. I'm told what to include in my syllabus. I'm given the overall learning outcomes of Nevada State College, and then the rest is up to me. So I can develop whatever I want to do to meet those outcomes and to fill that course requirement based on the course description. High levels of autonomy in this model are suggested to lead to a perceived responsibility for the outcomes. And if you feel highly responsible for the outcomes associated with your job, you tend to have high intrinsic motivation, high performance, high job satisfaction, low absenteeism, and low turnover. Now, the final factor in the job characteristics model, which is very important, is feedback. So are you having an open dialogue and conversation with your boss about how good of a job you're doing? Are you given constructive criticism to help you improve your performance? Do you know how good of a job you're doing, right? So all that feedback stuff. And of course, feedback leads to a knowledge of the results of your job, which can kind of go back into building task significance and task identity. The model doesn't get into that too much. And again, if you have knowledge of the results, you're more likely to have high intrinsic motivation, high performance, high satisfaction, low absenteeism, and low turnover. So this is a beautiful picture of the job characteristics model. And now I want to talk about motivating potential, which is a formula that's used to compute how motivated you would be based on a job. So, and I'm going to put this down here, a job only has motivating potential if all of these psychological states are achieved at some level. So these 5 core job characteristics can be assessed and then combined into a single motivating potential score using this formula. So motivating potential equals. So see how skill variety, task identity, and task significance are all in a box together? That's because this feeds into this formula too. So skill variety plus task identity plus task significance averaged. You add them together, you divide by 3. Times autonomy times feedback. So there have been studies that measure these things and then do this formula to see how motivating a job is. So for instance, you could have people rate these things on a scale from 1 to 10 and then plug all those scores in. So it's important to notice that Hackman and Oldham, the ones who made the job characteristics model, use this formula to show that motivation is not a simple combination of these 5 job characteristics. In the formula, you'll see that down here, right? Autonomy, task identity, task identity, skill variety, task identity, and task significance are averaged. And that really means that a job can have a low level of one of these characteristics or 1 or 2 of these characteristics, but still you can have a high score overall if you have a high score on the third. Okay, so if you look, autonomy and feedback aren't averaged, right? So if any of the levels of autonomy or feedback, or if all of these are at a 0, then the motivating potential will not be there. So kind of the key takeaway from this, for jobs to have any motivating potential, it must have both autonomy and feedback. Because if any one of these is 0, it zeroes out, right? If you multiply by 0, it cancels everything out. So to be motivating, a job has to at least have autonomy and feedback, and then at least one of the other 3 core dimensions, right? So at least skill variety, task identity, or task significance. So because I'm going to ask you to use this formula in your assignment, I'm going to give you an example of using it right now. So let's rewrite our formula. I'm going to abbreviate motivating potential as MP equals. So it was skill variety plus task identity plus task significance divided by 3 times autonomy times feedback. All right. So let's say that we are measuring all on a scale from 0, not at all, to 10, always. Okay. So for the first one, let's look at skill variety. So for skill variety, let's say that we're analyzing or we're looking at the motivating potential of a job as a data analyst, right? So instead of like me, where I work for the college and I'm doing a report for the college, this is a data analyst position where they work from home, but they have an opportunity to use many of their skills and abilities for their statistical analysis work assignments. So because they're able to use many of their skills and abilities, they would have a skill variety of, let's say, 8 out of 10. Now let's think about task identity for this job. So, however, this data analyst never gets to see the final report based on their analysis. They're just doing little pieces of the analysis that leads to the full report, but they never get to see it. And they never get to witness the decisions that are made based on those reports. So this data analyst would have a task identity of 0, right? They're not seeing the finished product. They have no idea how their work contributes to the overall goal of the organization. Now let's think about task significance. So let's say that the data analyst is also, they're working from home, right? And they have no idea how significant their work is to the success of the projects they're involved in. So their task significance would be a 0. Now let's think about autonomy. So let's say that, although the data analysis or the data analyst has some specific guidelines associated with their job, they're free to accomplish their work tasks as they please, as long as the timeline's reasonable. They're trusted to do the work the way they see fit. So let's say they have an autonomy of 7 out of 10. But unfortunately, when we get to feedback, the data analyst receives very little feedback on their work from their supervisor and is really unsure how well received their data analyses are by the rest of the work team. So their feedback is a big fat 0. So now let's compute their motivating potential of this job. So we have 8 plus 0 plus 0 over 3 times 7 times 0. So this becomes 8 divided by 3, which is 8 divided by 3, 2.67. So 2.67 times 7 times 0. Oh man, that 0 for feedback led to 0 motivating potential. So look how that works. Even if somebody had high skill variety, task identity, task significance, and had a ton of autonomy but got 0 feedback, they're not motivated. Or if somebody had high skill variety, high task identity, high task significance, and got tons of feedback but were never trusted to do their work on their own and were totally micromanaged, their motivating potential would also be 0. So now you can kind of see how it works, right? These were both 0, but that was okay because this was an 8. So it didn't 0 this out. But you have to have autonomy and feedback to be motivating, and you only have to have at least one of these to be motivating so that it doesn't 0 out your formula. So this model, it's important to note, does not ignore individual differences that are emphasized by the need-based theories. A part of this model that I didn't really cover is the power of this model really depends on an individual employee's desire for personal development and improvement on the job, or growth needs strength. So this model depends on growth needs strength. So the original model paid no attention to individual differences in motivations or desires or any of that. But then future work kind of came out and suggested there's a couple ways that this model can differ depending on certain things. And the most powerful individual difference that they focused on was growth needs strength. And again, that is the desire for professional development and improvement. So it's suggested that those who have high growth needs strength are going to experience more of a lack of motivation if any of these factors are not there. So I just read an article that was published in 2017 that really summarized and compared 100 years of work design research. And in this article, they really focused on how much of the past research supports these theories, right? So the article suggests that the job characteristics model is very influential because it helped codify those job characteristics, and it also had a huge influence on job analysis procedures. So a lot of times jobs are analyzed based on these different core dimensions. But this model has received limited support in research. Even the growth needs strength thing, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't when people actually collect data and test this theory. But overall, research suggests that meaningfulness is the most important motivational state. So this right here, right? So really focusing on skill variety, task identity, and task significance is probably the best place to start if you want to influence perceived meaningfulness, because meaningfulness is consistently a predictor of these outcomes in research. All right, so I'm going to end that now, and I'm going to create another video that focuses on the job demands resources model to help you with the second part of your applied activity.